Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have the next video for you in the Chinese TD line. This is the Tier VIII, the WZ-111-1G FT. I have to say, one thing about this line is that the names are not inspiration at all. In fact, even when I'm reviewing them, I keep having to double check the names because they're all similar as well. So, not exactly rolling off the tongue and not exactly awe-inspiring. But nonetheless, as we have a look at the tech spec here in Blitzhanger, the tanks are pretty good. This Tier VIII one is really good. I really liked playing it. So let's have a look at it. So firstly, the view range is not great, so you may want to use protective kit rather than standard rations, because even with that, the view range is not great. And you do need your teammates to spot for you anyway. It has two good options, 122 and 130 millimeter. 130 millimeter has better DPM. It also gives you more punch, 245 millimeters of pen, and a 10.10 second reload versus 9.26 with a 122 millimeter gun. Your Pramo round is heat, and you've got 325 millimeters of pen on that, just giving you just under 400 damage points. Now, you're going to need that if you're up tier to tier 9. You're going to need that for penning those big heavy tanks at tier 9. You do have 65 millimeters of pen with HE. This is really good because it gives you 660 damage points. And this is, and you're going to penetrate all light tanks and most medium tanks with that, so we'll load up some HE. Muzzle velocity is 930 meters per second. You need to max that out, though, as we saw there, with supercharge, because you know the higher the muzzle velocity, the better. And the good dispersion, obviously, if you use a refined gun, is quite low, just over 0.3, which means you're not losing so much kinetic energy. So you're not losing potential energy transferred into kinetic energy, which makes the shell more effective. Some basic physics there. So as you can see, we're using supercharge. We get the muzzle velocity up to 1,208 meters per second when we use supercharge. This is important because it really does make it easier if you're sniping over long distances. Now, it's less mobile than the previous tiers, it only does 35 kilometers an hour, so just be aware of that. It does do 18 reverse, so it's good at backing out of situations. It has good power to weight ratio, so it gets you into position quickly, which is important for a TD. You need to move in, adopt your TD position, your sniping position, while your lights and meds hopefully are spotting for you. It has poor traverse speed, so it's an inferior brawler to the previous tanks, the Tier 6 and Tier 7. So when you make the step up to Tier 8, just be aware of that. You're not going to traverse as quickly. If you get isolated or get caught by a light or medium tank, you're going to suffer in the traverse. So you need to back up and protect yourself. Try to keep your butt protected. Concealment figures are good, but only when still. If you're moving, the concealment figures go way down. So therefore, use the mini map to spot the enemy rather than moving your tracks. Also, if you use camo net, that's only active when your tracks are not moving. So you need to keep still as much as possible to improve your concealment numbers. But when you do, the concealment numbers are very good on this tank. So just a little thing to take note of. Let's have a look at the armour here. You can see that the top plate in the armour on the turret, if you can call it a turret when it doesn't have a turret, but the top plate armour is very good. And in the gameplay we're going to look at, you're going to see a lot of bounces from this tank. You can side scrape in this tank as well. The relative armour numbers on the sides are pretty good. And even when you angle up the lower plate and the medium plate in between the top plate and the lower plate, it's not bad at all. Particularly if you're up against 90mm guns or that, you're going to get some bounces. If you're up against big heavy tanks, you may not always get bounces on the lower plates, even if you're angling up. The top plate, and you can see here the relative armour numbers when you side scrape are pretty good. You're going to get some bounces, and you're going to see a lot of bounces in the game we're going to have a look at in this tank. That's frontal. At the back and at the sides, you are vulnerable. You have very little armor, as you can see here. You have big HE monsters like waffle tractors, rim borsigs, ISU-152s, etc. around a Tier 8, Tier 9. If you're moving, be careful. If you're moving and you're spotted, make sure you have 2 repair kits. You do not want to get tracked out in the open on this, because you can be one-shotted by something like a waffle tractor or rim borsig with firing a HE round into the back or sides of you. So just be very careful with that. Be careful when you're moving in the open, particularly if you're going uphill, because if you're going uphill, this tank slows down considerably, and you will be a moving target, but a slow moving target, and be exposed for quite a long time. So be careful if you're moving between sniping positions in this tank. You can see here when you're top tier, or even against your peers in Tier 8, you have good armor profile on the front. Even when you're up tier to Tier 9, you've okay armor profile on the front. So this tank is going to front on, it's good performing in terms of its armor. Just sides and back you're vulnerable, so be careful. In terms of tactics, this is not as fast and mobile as the tanks before it in Tier 6 and Tier 7. Therefore, you don't have as many options in the variation of your game style. At only 35 kilometers an hour, you're going to struggle, for example, if you go to support your meds. Therefore, particularly starting off, I would just play this as a traditional TD, sitting behind your enemy, using that big 130mm gun to farm damage. You need your team to support you, need your lights and your med tanks to go out there and to support you by spotting up the enemy. But, you know, if you can do that, if you've got some good team players, you can do quite a bit of damage in this tank, and it can be very effective. So here you're going to see, this is what I do in this game. I check the setup and I decide I'm going to support the meds, not as I might have done with the previous tiers, because I'm slower moving. I'm actually going to go to a sniping position on this map where I can support them as they move towards C. I've got two very fast tanks here. I've got an RU and I've got a Dracula. They're going to get out there and they're going to spot up the enemy for me, I hope. So I am moving into a traditional TD spot. I'm going to open up fields of fire onto C, across the sand dunes, even have some limited fields of fire down to the far edge of the town if necessary. I may even be able to support to a limited extent on B. So I've opened up quite a bit of fields of fire. Now you can see what I mean about the muzzle velocity there. When you've got a fast moving target like the RU-251, over long distances you need to deflection shoot on this, and against a fast moving target like that RU, sometimes you're just not able to get off shots. So I fired 2 shots there, missed both, even though I was trying to do some tracking deflection shooting. So you know, the muzzle velocity at 1200 meters per second, and you're firing a distance there of around 400 to 500 meters. You're talking about, you know, over half a second to reach your target. If your target's moving, it's very difficult to hit. So that is one drawback. But then a lot of TDs have muzzle velocity like that. It's just, you know, trying to hit an RU-251 or a Dracula at a far distance in a TD is often quite difficult. Now, here I'm going to take 3 shots in this TD, and I don't hit with any of them. So, and this one, I just fluffed that shot completely. I don't know why it didn't go through. Should have been able to penetrate the T-54 mod one there. I don't know why. But anyway, I just said there that the patience is the key to playing the TD. You know, you need patience when you're playing Tank Destroyer. You need to wait for shots to open up and then take them when they do. So I'm being pretty patient in this game because I've fired 3 shots, I've only had 3 shots, and I haven't done any damage yet. 0 damage, 0 bounces. I've contributed nothing to this game yet. Now decision time, because I now have no shots open. And as we discussed in the sniping guide, when does sniping become camping? Well, a simple definition, sniping becomes camping when there are no shots available. Then you're just camping. But you're camping when you're not influencing the game or helping your team, which I am not in this instance, so therefore I decide to move. I'm trying to get my gun in the game. I'm trying to start to influence the game if I can. We are now, we've lost a tank on each side, but I can see that my allies are considerably outnumbered on the right here at B and at A. And yeah, so I need to move. I need to somehow get my gun into the game. So I'm just gonna come straight up. I think we've lost so much time now. I can't really flank. I'm just gonna come straight up and engage the enemy. Put a nice shot in there, and I get a bounce. This is what I mean about that upper plate, right? My big gun, nice alpha roll back. I'm just showing him the upper plate. Tiger 2 gets a bounce off my upper plate. And I've drawn first blood, so I've done my first bit of damage. Now I'm going to come around. I'm confident in the frontal armour of this tank. The RU is coming as well, so then I put another round into him. Now what am I doing here? I'm moving into a position where I want to keep my back safe, because I know there's reds all around this B and A area. So I'm taking a defensive position where I'm covered at the back and sides, but I'm opening up 270 degrees of fields of fire for myself, while keeping myself relatively well protected from the sides and back, as I have the buildings to the side, to both two sides and to my back. And from here I'm hoping I can do some more damage without making myself too vulnerable. Now I'm moving back into this position here because there are reds all around me. Now you're going to see a monster brawl coming up here, because I am going to get dogpiled here. So the KV is coming in on me here. This is a tough cookie, right? This is not really what you want. You don't want to be getting into a pushing match with a KV4. I also have reds. Look at this red indicator. There are just reds everywhere. I am General Custer at Little Bighorn. I am getting surrounded. But I've given this KV a position where he can't get to the sides and back of me. He's trying to push me into the corner to lock me into position, which he does. But now he's presented himself with a problem, because he wasn't able to get shots onto the lower part of my vulnerable armor. I was only been able to shoot the top parts. Let's have a look at this again. So the top part of the front plates of this tank are its strongest armor. I have a big gun. I am going to be able to pen him every time with heat rounds. I switched to heat because I don't want to run the risk of any bounces, because this is going to come down to the wire. Now, he is blocking his allies from getting to the lower vulnerable parts of my armor on the side, on the bottom. They can only get to the acute, relative high armor angles on the sides of the tank or the top plate of my tank. So by backing into this defensive position where my back is protected, and I'm only showing the side scraping angles of my tank, neither he nor his allies can get shots onto the vulnerable lower armored parts of my body, and I'm able to clear him off. And I'm actually going to stay here for a couple of seconds to assess what's going on, because there are reds everywhere and I don't really want to come out, because to come out I'm going to have to go side on, and there's a big SU-152 and a Rim Borsig out there just waiting for me to pop my vulnerable little Tootsie out so they can blow it off. Now, I decide to wait. I'm waiting. Now they are trying to move into position where they can get me. Now is the time for me to move out, and because now is the time where I'm going to be up against them 1v1 rather than all three of them waiting for him just to pop out. Again, you saw there, showed him a bit of leg. He took the bait, fires a round in, bounces off the top of me again. I'm looking again. I don't want to see where the Borsig is and where the SU is. I really don't want to come out and show my vulnerable side or butt to them right now. Okay, now I think I can move. So bounce a shot there, I'm coming out. Now I've got a shot on him, clear him off. He was side on to me, he made it easy for me. Now I'm gonna drop the adrenaline, push onto the SU. The SU has a monster aiming time, right? I know that from having played it and reviewed it myself. I know if I rush him at short distance, especially with my front armor, there's a good chance I was going to get a bounce, which I did. Now I'm showing an angle onto the Rim Borsig, and bam, clear him off. So I think that was like a really good example of how you can have confidence in the top frontal armor and the side scraping abilities of this tank. You got massive dog pile there, 4v1, and being a bit clever by protecting the vulnerable parts of my tank, I was able to come out. Very unusual game. Such a kind of dog pile brawl doesn't happen that often. Maybe if they had rushed into this to try to get me at the sides, they might have been better. They should have maybe been a bit more aggressive, because they allowed me to play to the strengths of my tank. But hey, you can only play with the hand you're dealt, and by being able to get me into that protected position, I got mastery badge, top gun, high caliber, steel wall, bit of a carry, and won the game for my team. So overall, pretty good team play from me, supporting my team, because my team were not that strong. You see the next best player was the Dracula, who did just 1.2k damage, so huge carry from me as well. And I guess I just got lucky that the opposition team probably didn't play as well as a team as they could have done, but then also I think the KV4 blocking them put them off as well. So let's have a quick recap here. It's less mobile TD, but has better armour than its predecessors. It has a larger profile, though it's bigger than the previous tanks with very low profiles, so therefore you're a larger target, so just take note of that. You're going to be more, it's easier to hit you than it was the previous tanks, plus you're not as fast moving. It's not as versatile in its play style, I believe, because it's slower, so therefore you need to play it more as a typical TD, playing from the back and supporting and farming damage. The two gun types, the top gun has a lot of punch, but the lower gun, the 122, is also quite effective. But I just prefer to play with the top gun in case I'm up tiered, because both guns are pretty good. You get 400 damage points on average on the smaller gun, 460 on the larger gun, so not a huge difference. The reload is slower. On the top gun it's 10.10 seconds against 9.26 seconds, but again, not a huge difference. I would use supercharged to max out the muzzle velocity, because the muzzle velocity is not great on it, as you saw when I was trying to hit the RU over distance. And also use refined gun to reduce the dispersion, to reduce the loss of potential energy conversion into kinetic energy. It has no real gun depression, only 6 degrees, which is kind of weird when you consider that this tank line was designed to fight in the Chinese mountains. It seems a major design flaw. Concealment numbers are very good when still, but moving tracks breaks your camo, so therefore use the mini-map to spot the enemy and to look for targets rather than moving your tracks. The armour is good, the top plates especially, as you saw in the gameplay, and you can side scrape and get bounced on this tank again, as you saw in the gameplay, if you play to those strong relative armour numbers on the sides. You need your team to help you with this tank though, especially when you're sniping. You need your meds and your light tanks to spot. If they don't, it's very difficult to influence the game as a TD. And this can be a very effective tank when you're in a good sniping spot and your team spots for you. If not, of course, then you have to move, as I did in that game, and go to try and get involved and support them. If you want a review on the TD guide and sniping guide, have a look at them. They're on channel. The muzzle velocity is not the best, so deflection shooting and tracking shots are necessary skills for this tank. If you want to get a recap on those, again, look at the TD and the sniping guides that we have on the channel, particularly as the muzzle velocity is a bit low. The music is from Puccini's beautiful Chinese masterpiece Turandot, about the beautiful Chinese empress and her search for her lover, and that is the overture from this wonderful piece of opera. Hope you enjoyed it, I hope you found it useful. Thank you to Frau Schwartz for helping us with the recap, and I guess all that remains for me to say is cheers, mush. I hope you found it useful, I hope you found it enjoyable, and for now I will just say pants off.